We can all win, but the reality is you need to win. It's okay if we all win together, but you have to find where your place to win is.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. Thank you so much to our audience and to Million Podcasts. We were just ranked in the top 10 once again for strategic planning and execution podcasts. So, anyways, super excited about that. Very excited to have with us today Jason Sherwood. Jason was, just to give you a little bit of background behind him, Jason Sherwood is the founder and creative director of Phase 23. It's a brand strategy and creative design studio dedicated to helping companies clarify their identity, craft compelling messages, and build visual brands that connect with their audiences. He also spoke at our event at the 40 Strategy Growth Workshop in Phoenix, Arizona. He crushed it. I mean, it was just, you did, Jason. It was just a really powerful piece because branding, that core sense of marketing. I mean, you worked with large companies beforehand and supported them, from Nike and the Air Jordan brand and other major brands that people know, those labels. And there's just this expertise and this understanding that's not understood by many, that go into it. And you helped bring that, but bring it to small companies, because that's the challenge, right? People think you have to send a gazillion, and you don't, right? And especially today, you don't have to spend these gazillion amount of dollars, right, to help get into that value. But what I want to start with, Jason, is, and we were touching upon it earlier prior to communicating this podcast, is things are changing so fast right now. And I know I've seen some crazy things. You've been seeing some crazy things. Can you just share us a few of these examples that you're seeing right now that's happening, like, for example, in SEO, of where people thought they knew what they're doing and everything's just being pulled, a rug's being pulled underneath them?
Yeah, and as a quick caveat, SEO is not my expertise specifically, but if you look at the way that digital
Mhm.
marketing and things are happening right now, where companies have been building um, expertise and visibility online via SEO for years. Uh, Classes in universities focus specifically on how to be a successful marketer within SEO. Now, the majority of search, now I don't have the specific stats in front of me, but search is now taking place within AI. And even Google has now switched from their traditional algorithm that they were using and has switched to Gemini 3. So within these, we'll call them a black box, whether you're using ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, Gemini 3, whatever it might be to do your search, which is exponentially rising in terms of the total number of searches, that doesn't play into SEO. Now you're dealing with things called GEO and ISO and a variety of other acronyms. But businesses have been fundamentally changed in terms of your ability to be found online the way that it used to be done, right? So, what does that mean? Everybody's trying to pivot, everybody's trying to shift to react to the technology shift. And the old adage is the more things change, the more things stay the same. So as the tactics, as the ability, I think, for people to get their message out changes, how do we react to AI as the search mechanism? The one thing that people are consistently saying, though, is in order for you to be reached, you have to have a compelling message. What is your story? How are you communicating that? Are you positioned properly? And these are fundamental things that branding, marketing, communication has been since the beginning, right? These are the fundamentals that don't get, this isn't a pay to play sort of scenario. This is the fundamentals of how you build a business strategically. And here I used one of those marketing words, right? Strategically, which is not really a position, but you use strategy to make sure that you know where your company lives within your market and that you stake that place and you know clearly where that is. And we talked about that in the growth workshop around just a 2-word positioning statement.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so for those, once again, those who weren't there, and there's so much, once again, more experience, and we can't even in a podcast get across what you do, but just do that two thing, 2 word thing, and share it for those who are listening right now, like the power of that.
Yeah, we went through a process where I had asked one of our attendees to call their 3 best customers and ask them to describe their company in 2 words and to see if there were some similarities in what they had. Now, most of the time, those customers aren't going to say the exact same thing. And the downside to that is that costs you money if they're not saying the same thing because they can't describe you clearly or effectively. And it also means you don't have a clear place within your market. Now, in some cases, you do have some things that are there. So I used an example of Nike running and a position of where they might be, like the Nike Vaporfly shoe, right? It's a $250 shoe with a carbon plate in it. And, why would you buy this shoe for racing? And if you were to ask, like at a marathon expo or something like that, you would get, fastest shoes, or, people would say, the greatest racers wear them. They win marathons, right? So if you were to pare that down, you would say, fast, win, proven. So what would you say if it was a Brooks shoe? They would say it's comfortable, it's injury prevention, right? Or like a Hoka, you might get I always hear cloud, it's always like walking on clouds, but it's comfortable. Again, it's easy miles, cushioning, that's what you get. Each one of those owns a different lane within that category. And the customers are saying that unprompted, right? So Nike doesn't just say that they're the fastest, their shoes actually win races. The latest marathon, wasn't it? Breaking world records under 2 hours or something. Whatever that last race. I'm sorry. Clearly, I'm not a marathon runner, but an amazing, amazing performance. Right, their position is real and it's defendable. So most companies don't have that. They have some aspirational marketing, but if you can pare down where you are realistically right now into 2 words from what your customers are saying, you can identify where you really are. And that then allows you to say, where's the gap? What do I need to do to change that? Because if it's exactly the same as your other customers, which is what we found in the 40 strategy growth workshop, then we know what we need to start to change in order to stand out somewhere.
What's misunderstood by many, once again, who are out there, of, once again, these differences of okay, I'm going to sell, I'm going to do marketing, I'm going to do branding, right? They're 3 different things. 3 different parts around that. And you were sharing also another example of, hey, there are people out there that are just sending salespeople out in groves to do something, to sell, but the message isn't connecting, right?
Well, in this particular case, there's a company that we looked at the comparative messages between them and their largest competitors. And literally across the board, the message was completely identical. Put it up in front of the client, saw all of those. And we were talking about what the next steps would be. And they had already made an investment in some outside sales moving forward. The challenge was um, they had no differentiation. There was no moat around which clients they were specifically going after. They had targets, of course, but they hadn't really said, well, we're not going to take this group. We're not focused on this particular group. And they had nothing that was changing or was different in their messaging compared to any of these other groups. So again, shouting into the wind that says, "Hey, we're just like everybody else. Choose us." So what that does is now what we're saying is we're competing on price, right? We're Why are you choosing us if we're exactly the same as everything else? We're just a commodity. And yes, you can look at it in terms of one of my joys in life, because I'm a designer at heart, as I love the visuals, the visceral impact that a brand can have. But from a nuts and bolts business perspective, they're on equal footing. And because they had put the proverbial cart before the horse, they didn't have the funds to then go back and actually build a strategy that would have them use this sales team in a way that, with a message that would position them differently than their competitors. And so I'm afraid that what they will be doing is just competing on price without differentiation.
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating, and I think you said something really interesting there. And there's this tendency, and it's common, right? It's like, hey, we need to compete, so we need to sound like, right?
Mm,
And there's this like natural part of, hey, we want to sound like somebody else because it resonates, but it also doesn't differentiate you, right?
mm,
And what I think is often missed, and is maybe because we're too nice these days, it's competition to win
mm.
business. When you get second place, right? The classic, kind of coffees for closers, and second place is kitchen knives, right? I mean, when you don't win the deal, second place is a loss. It's same thing in war, right? Second place is a loss. You don't get it back. It's not a moral victory.
Right.
It's a loss. And and so I, especially with, once again, the change that are taking place, you sense people are throwing that stuff into ChatGPT and coming up with an answer. But of course, that answer is the same thing that everyone else is doing, right? And so then they get through that answer, and then they get to an end result, and they still are different, and they haven't found something that connects and differentiates them, right, from somebody else.
I think about it in terms, and again, maybe this is part of this is something you and I have in common from a sports background standpoint and a coaching standpoint. When I look at a team that I'm going to be coaching against, right? Yes, I'm identifying all of their strengths, right? I want to defend against that. But I'm also looking at where they're weak, and can I exploit that, right? Is there something, if they're really weak in a certain area on the field or the court or whatever we're doing, is there a way for me to be great in that area? Right? So in business, if I'm looking at a competitor within my same market, and they're and let's say I'm a challenger brand and they're the leading brand, right? And they're really great across these the majority of these categories. Am I going to compete against them in the area where they are already top, right? They are really excellent at this. It's what's made them a leader in that brand, or in that market rather. But maybe they're not quite as good in this one other piece. So instead of me focusing on challenging them in the area where they are already excellent, right? If you were playing the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, are you going to try to attack Michael Jordan the entire time? No, right? Instead, you're going to find one of the other players, and probably not Scottie Pippen. You're probably trying to find another player that you're trying to exploit in order for you to win. I know I just dated myself for the younger audience out there, but you're going to find
Good news is people wear Jordans more as much as they do today as they did when we were kids.
more, actually, way more
Exactly.
actually than they did back then, way more. But you're going to find a different place for you to exploit. And a great example is within the restaurant industry. um, if you look at the top 10 restaurants, right? And this one restaurant, was tops in all these areas. The the restaurateur would come in, you eat at this other place, you identify, wow, they're great at all of these things. But in this area here, in this area here, they're just okay. So they go back to their restaurant and they say, we're going to be the best at this and at this. The areas where the great restaurant wasn't. And now we're going to challenge them in the areas where they aren't because we can be better than them in those places, right? So, again, as a challenger brand that gives you an opportunity to make inroads where those other companies simply can't, right?
I think that analogy as well, and I'll go one more time, doubling down on it on a sports analogy of like,
Yeah,
let's just say football as an example,
sure.
right? So in football, let's just say for argument's sake, you happen to have a couple good linemen on the right
Right.
hand side of your thing, and the opposite side, they have a weak person or two that just is not as strong as the other side lineman. And it's interesting. One of the teams same high school you and I went to, Jason, right?
Sure.
I go high school most teams historically would run to the right because that was the power side,
Mm,
right? The traditional power side. We intentionally made a stronger left side of the offensive line. Why? Because we knew they often had a weaker on the other side because they didn't expect you to run to the left. They expect you to run to the right. And so, and then the funny part is like people would think, well, you have to run your script. So once again, I'm going to run my playbook, meaning I got to run my 15 plays. Folks, if you're getting 7 yards a carry because you found a weakness in the opposite side, keep running at them until they adjust.
mhm.
Yeah, maybe you throw one play opposite, but keep running. You could run some small little variations. And that's what you're getting at, Jason. Is when you
Yes.
find a weakness and you're gaining traction, don't get scared, get excited. Don't think, "Oh, now we have to do something different." Double down into that success.
And I think you mentioned something too earlier as you were talking about competition. Again, I'm like you with a sports background. I look at it. I get excited and motivated around the competition. I want to drive and succeed in that way. Not every business runs with gets motivated with that type of mentality of wanting to challenge in that way. It's not a zero sum game, right? So, and so for some businesses, it's like, well, I'm not looking to beat them. Let's not look at it as a zero sum game. Identify the areas that you can be amazing at, right? You can still challenge because you're still looking for the hearts and minds of consumers in some way, shape, or form, or other businesses if you're a B2B company. We can all win, but the reality is you need to win. So it's okay if we all win together, but you have to find where your place to win is. So again, it's not just all for those that want to eat meat. It is, though, to identify those areas where you can win. And so, again, I want to make it clear. Sometimes people feel like, well, I don't know that my business, it doesn't resonate with me. This idea of, it's all win and everyone else loses. Well, it's not necessarily that way. It can be, and that can be a motivator for some business owners. For some, it's not, and it doesn't have to be zero sum. I guess that's my point in the end.
Yeah, no, I think well done. And so I want to hop to the workshop just for a minute. And once again, those who don't know what it is, go take a look at 40strategy.com. We have the 40 Strategy Growth Workshop. We're excited. We're having our next 40 Strategy Growth Workshop in November 2nd and 3rd in Phoenix. And so we're excited about that event. So, so question though, you've been to a lot of conferences in your life, Jason. Um, what stood out different about our conference? And what was your experience behind that? And I'm kind of sure, for those who are listening, you were there, you were a speaker, but you also got to listen, right, to these other
I did.
speakers. Tell us about that and what your experience was like, and why it's something that you're excited to be partnered with.
Yeah, there was two parts. So as much as I enjoyed presenting. And frankly, I loved the one-on-one connection I was able to have with the other attendees, both the other speakers and those that were there to attend. I mean, the one-on-one connection with them was excellent. I'm looking forward to that again. I think it's going to be fantastic. But then putting my attendee hat on, what I loved is that there was such a variety of the type of speakers. Number one, the speakers were excellent within their fields. Number one, I felt like there was actionable value coming out of those, and then being able to follow up with them and ask questions. Again, that one-on-one connection, I think, was exceptionally valuable. And so it wasn't something that you walked away from. You wrote a few notes and you felt inspired in the moment and you walked away. Instead, it was something that you had some tangible things that you could work on, and you could actually follow up with that individual, um, and say, "Hey, I'm implementing this. Um, what would you suggest here?" And even build business relationships in which now we're taking steps to do something more, right? Which I think was very, very powerful coming out of that. And to be honest, that was true from some of the smallest businesses to some of the larger businesses that were there. So very unique, and I think really powerful part of the workshop.
Thank you for sharing that, and we're just still tickled pink, after the what a great experience, once again, everyone had. We
Yeah,
enjoyed it,
for sure.
speakers enjoyed it, the attendees enjoyed it, and the value and so much. And what's interesting here is there is more than one conference out there in the world to go to, right?
Oh
You
yeah.
know, there's a massive competition, but I know we can win with what we're trying to do, right? Focused on small business owners, only 40 business owners, direct connection, and be able to speak to real experts who actually do work on fixing businesses and making it better, right? That's what we can be best in the world at. And so it's so exciting that when we got that 100 net promoter score, it validated what
Oh
we
yeah.
thought could become true. And now it's now just taking it to the next level. It's just continue to expand it, right? To continue to go through that part of it. And and what we also loved about it too is like you and like a lot of the people who spoke and Dee and I mean Tommy and I mean it's amazing where they came away with business relationships. And that's what we want. We have a growth mindset. We're not trying to take this all for ourselves. It's like there are people who need help. And that's part of the value that we have the community and the experts that work with us that they can solve the problem that they have,
Yes.
right? Because we all have different things we're trying to fix. And gosh, knowing stuff of my world of being in operations, it doesn't matter if you fix something that's not broken and it's not moving you any faster. It's like pushing a rope. Yeah, you've gotten better, but it's not your bottleneck.
Yeah,
So let's
right.
let's go into like something that's once again kind of go in the importance. You're creating and it goes back to that question. You create a brand, create attraction. You do marketing to get leads. And then you need good salespeople to close those leads into a deal, right? It's it's a process as those 3 different steps. But you and I both know it takes time to develop trust,
Mm.
right? So tell us about that on the trust side. What are you seeing today and what has changed and what hasn't changed to develop trust in the marketplace, especially for a small business?
If there's one thing I can say, and I don't know that this is definitive, I'll only speak from my experience. I think small businesses, um, now I'll paint with a broad stroke here. I think small businesses are looking at business services as commodities. I think they're really looking at cost. And part of that is understandable considering the current environment and where things are. I also think it is a reflection of where they think actual value comes from. Perception, I think they think is, well, I can just put that into ChatGPT and I'm going to get something out, right? That's going to be of value. That may or may not be true in terms of the way that you do that, regardless of your prompt engineering, right? I, I think if I were to use my crystal ball a little bit, I would think that we will see from a technology standpoint, we will continue to see a positive progression in terms of efficiencies and more opportunity for small businesses to be able to utilize this technology to be able to do more quicker and have broader reach. Their legs and arms get longer, right? What I think will become more valuable is the personal relationships that they actually have. And I think the old idea of actual networking and relationships, the personal trust, I think the value of that at some point here, if not now, in the very short term, will become increasingly important because the actual trust and verification of truth is going to become really important. You can look at me in the face and say, Jason, I know you've got my back. And if something goes sideways, you're going to be there to help me through this thing. Right. Um, Regardless of what that thing might be. Right. So, in the same way, I think that small business owners are looking to mitigate risk. And so, what they have to lose, while monetarily in numbers may not be massive, in percentage is everything. Right. And I think they feel and see that risk as being larger than ever. So I think that trust factor and the connections between that, I think that's going to become critically more important. So the question for us, those that are working with those small to medium sized businesses, is how do we become visible and express um, the value that we have, right? To be able to show, hey, no, we can deliver and we are there for you. And that may be the same question that they have to answer within their marketplace.
It's been exciting. We have a mutual client, and I don't think we should say what they are yet because I'm quite, as of the point of this recording, fully released everything, even though they're in process of getting improved. And I'll say this, Jason, just from my observation, it has been so exciting to see their perceptions change
Mm,
behind who they are and what they can become. So one of the,
100%.
biggest challenges, and what's fun with you, Jason, is you've worked with literally some of the, well, Nike, right? Is
Yeah.
right. I mean, it really from branding, it doesn't get any. They're the best. They're the one of the best in the world, right?
Yeah.
In their industry, and they're right up there in the top of people who've been able to brand who they are and what they are, and continuously do it. And we don't always necessarily have to agree, right, with their positions that they have, but
Right.
man, they are out there, and you know who they are, right? And we're often us as small business, we are still playing small ball, and we with an important thing, a modest investment.
Mm,
And if you know what your quality of your product or service is, if you recognize that that investment can bring you 2 or 3, 4 more sales because of a new brand, and that's just to pay for the cost, your pure ROI, but you really think about can really change your perception of who you are in the market to continuously drive new sales, what's happening. It's super powerful. It is a really exciting thing of the future. And once again, I'm going to our mutual client week. Once again, we can't talk about it yet. I wish we could. So we could have people take a look at our website. Probably by the time this gets released, it'll be
mm,
out there. But you've completely changed somebody who, for lack of a better term, was kind of a mom and pop shop. Now
mm,
you have the
yeah.
second generation in this, and they are excited to like dominate their industry
Mm,
in their region, right? And this name, I don't think it could happen without this branding change. And so and obviously one thing we gotta be careful, forgive us for not showing who and what in the name. But kind of from your perspective, and by the way, it hasn't been what I love about it is it's not been all give and take because I get to see from the outside your communications, right? And it's like, oh, we don't like and you don't have to love everything. What you have to do is get to a new thing and you push them and it's almost as mean in the middle sometimes, but that middle is still eternity away from where they were. I
Mm,
mean, it's like
yeah.
still so far away. It's like it's such a change. What do you see in the confidence and in the there's almost a if you may, I hate to use the term pride because sometimes it can be,
Mm.
could be a bad thing, but there is almost something to it that's powerful.
Well, I think they see themselves differently. We've talked about the without getting too esoteric. I mean, you're looking at what is your internal voice, right? How do you see yourself? How do you look at yourself? Who are we? What do we do? Part of my process was allowing them to see how they where their strengths were, what they were great at. And in the workshop, I talked about how part of this was actually showing themselves a mirror of themselves and calling that out. Now, part of that was me switching the language a little bit and giving them um, a little bit different sound to the things that they were saying. And in that, I would ask them the challenging questions. Do you believe that? Is that who you really are? And they're like, yes, that is who we are. And as we continued to go through that, there was again, a process of discovery as a company and a belief because it was resonant. It really is who they are. I wasn't trying to create something that was fabricated. It is who they are at their core. And because it's resonant, everyone within that company, not just those that are leading it, it is something that they are excited about, they want to represent, and there is a new energy as they are moving forward. In fact, they can't get new things quick enough. They're they're really excited about expressing this brand as quickly as they can. And so part of that too is like, hold on just a little bit, make sure you're taking the steps in the right way and get that out there. And I think they are. I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah, yeah. It is so. I truly mean it. It's been so exciting to see it, see the improvement, see the development, um, and once again go. Hey, this is there's so much belief in branding.
Just as a side note, and this is not necessarily, you've had other folks on here that are specialists in this, especially around structure and organization. But it is something that I focus on with companies around their brand. And as I've provided some structure around how their brand can be rolled out, even structure in how they um, receive and how they have all of the materials and they read through that, they feel a ownership and, as you said, a pride in what it is that they have.
Yep.
And again, from a mom and pop, from a, small to medium sized business, that gives them that motivation to say, "Hey, we're here now, but our vision is way up here now. We're going after this because we can do this."
Right.
And they do
Yeah.
have that, and they have that roadmap now. They didn't have that before. Now they have that.
Yeah, yeah. It creates what it does when you get that clarity. We do this anytime. Once again, it doesn't matter what the strategy is about: sales, marketing, operations, uh, headcount. When you get clarity over what you need and you develop a roadmap on how you can get there, things move faster.
Yes.
You know, and that's what's fun because that's what holds people, most small businesses back, and even big, larger businesses. They get caught in who we are and what we are and have been, as opposed to going, why can't we? They don't look within enough of why can't we get to the next level? I'm gonna poke fun at all of my clients and myself. Okay, when I say this, love you, all my clients. But one of the reasons we don't do the SWOT, we do a slightly different view of it. It's because it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. And what I mean by that statement is
Mm,
that here's the strengths. And what we hear about 99% of the time is we have great people. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. We have great people. Oh, we have the best people. We're the best people. So then why have you not grown in the past 3 years? Oh, we have great people. Okay. That's good.
And so
So
does your
why haven't you?
competitor.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of these things of like super not valuable. And what's interesting is it's not until you get into execution, you've figured out where you want to go, that these sometimes people, sometimes a process, sometimes a system, sometimes some combination thereof, they become self-evident.
Mm,
What's broken? People, process, systems, or something different, or some combination thereof.
mhm.
It becomes self-evident. And it's such a beautiful part of the process. It's not always fun to find out the truth.
Yes.
I'm just going to step further.
And that almost takes us full circle to that two-word, positioning in the
Yes.
beginning, right? I
Yes,
mean,
yes, yes, like, go and it was so, longtime client, literally my longest tenured client, we meet every single week to have a discussion. We had a chance to meet again for strategic in-person facilitation, and he said, "Carl, I've got the best people." Same concept, Jason. And by the way, his people today versus where they were
mm,
night and day. So,
mm,
massive change. And he said, "I've got the best people." I said, and I won't give numbers out, but there's different levels of business, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 100. And he was in one of those brackets. I'm not gonna say which bracket he's in, right? But I've been in those brackets above his bracket, and I was able to tell him, "No, you don't. You don't have the best team for the next level because 'cause I've
mm,
seen it. I've seen it." 'Cause I've been a part of teams that have gone a company and went from 20 to 75 million, and we completely revamped the senior team. Completely, almost
mhm.
every position had 1 or 2 changes. So, anyway, where I guess where did we go here? It's because if you don't change who you are, you can't go to somewhere new to become something different,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and you have to really understand, again, who you are, and when you look at that, I mean, again, if I go back and I think about what the recipe, for those two-word positions, are there's kind of a recipe that I kind of put together. It should be customer sourced, number one. It shouldn't be internally sourced. If you're sitting at the board, the conference room, coming up with it internally, it's not going to be right because it's in the perspective of your customers or clients. Second, it has to be specific. It can't be generic, right? We're strategic. That word, right, which always comes up. Well, we do it strategically. Yeah, it's too generic. You don't know what that means, right? It needs to be defendable. It's got to be provable. It's not aspirational,
Yeah.
right? It has to be
Uh-huh.
something that you literally can say that we do.
Okay.
And then it has to be consistent, something that your three best clients would always agree with. That they would say, "Oh yeah, no, they do that. That always happens," right? If you can do those four things, if you can put that into the recipe, right, then you can get to those two words. And sometimes you think about those just two words is really hard to pare it down. But the reason you kind of do that exercise to make it two words is it's kind of the Occam's razor theory, which is cut away everything that's extra to get you to the most efficient or best, most distilled part of the process. If you can get to those two words, now you can begin to look at that's who we are. And then you can say, if my competitors are using those same two words, then maybe we should keep digging because there's more, right? There's more that we need to do. If not, then maybe we found something that we can own as a position, you know If we can't prove it with our process or projects or whatever we're doing, then maybe it's just aspirational. But if we can prove it, then we have a real position, right? And if our clients didn't actually say it, then we're probably just guessing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
if they said it in one way, shape, or form, if they said it, then you're building on reality. And I think that small to medium sized businesses, you know what, huge corporations do this too.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just build on fantasy. But I think in small sized businesses, because so much of it is built on aspiration, because you start from nothing, I think so much of their positioning and what they look at is aspirational. You do have to take a hard look at reality, and it's sometimes hard, particularly because, and I can say this from experience in multiple companies, that whether or not you intend to or not, especially for small business owners, it is difficult to separate yourself from the business. And it's hard to take a hard look at yourself and say, we're not measuring up to the competitors, right? You have to separate yourself from the business. This is the business. This is me. Can I improve? Sure. Can the business improve? Absolutely. But let's get really honest and make that separation and base it on reality, right? Anyway.
Yeah, this is said so well, and of course, Jason, we're at the tail end of our podcast here, and but just a couple words of when we talk about with people, like for example, their core values, and I that's a multiple session podcast there alone. But one thing, right, is they'll go, well, this is our core value, and it's like, well, is that an aspiration or is it true?
Mm,
And especially when people are coming up with them for the first time. And like, "Oh, this is," and it's like, you can't put it down in a core value, it's not who you are today.
mhm.
And then secondly, can you define it as a core behavior? A key behavior, sorry, that a key behavior within the core value that you can describe it. Like
Yes.
integrity is like one of the worst core values. It's the most common, but worst from the fact that you can't call somebody out on their integrity without getting in a fist fight.
Right. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So that's why it's terrible to use it unless you define it.
Is it defendable? Have you proven that over the court? And hopefully you haven't had to be called out on that multiple times, right?
Yeah, but once again, it's like, do you have words that can you talk about without it feeling like somebody calling your mama a bad name, right?
Yeah,
You
right,
have to do
right.
something like that def as I said, defendable and ideally whenever best from third party, right?
Mm,
Because we don't reflect upon ourselves. And this is why I'm saying the value, once again, of bringing people like Jason from the outside to look at what you do because we just can't see it because we've been doing something for 4, 5, 10, sometimes 20 years, sometimes
right.
multiple generations, and we
Mhm,
lock ourselves into these insights, which once again prevents us. We're trapped, right? We're trapped to go to the next level. Um, but it's fun. It's fun when we unlock it. It's super fun. As I know, we work together, Jason, and I love these common clients where they just had these completely different insights and they're just super excited. So, Jason, thank you so much for being a
no, thank
guest on
you.
the Rest of Us podcast today.
No, thank you so much, Carl, appreciate it. Anytime.
Awesome. There was those listening. I encourage you, and Jason, once again, for those who have not know your website, what's the best way to connect?
Yeah, phase23.com, PHASE 23.com.
Okay, as well, I'd like to say, everyone else is listening. We're just so grateful for you listening. I hope you've loved this conversation. I mean, there's so many things that are changing right now. Don't freeze.
No.
Invest in your future, invest in assets that's gonna make a difference for you. If you're not sure if your branding, if your concept are working with you, I encourage you to go out to phase23.com to
Mhm.
learn more about what they're doing. We know they work. We work, they work with our clients. So that's why he's gonna come speak at a future cohort event with us. He spoke at our last workshop. Jason provides a tremendous amount of value. But we're excited about you. We hope you enjoy this journey. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. We're top 10 podcast 2 years in a row. We're super fantastic about that. As we always like to say, wishing you the very best at measuring your success. Have a great day.